Welcome to the CCDC Effect, our series of interviews with the people who understand the tool of urban renewal and how to catalyze economic development, public safety, and shape the built environment, especially in downtown Boise and beyond. Well, welcome to the CCDC Effect, Phil. It's wonderful to have you here with us, and it's going to be a fun few minutes where we can cover a lot of ground in a short amount of time, going back to 1999 and your ascendance to the executive director position at CCDC at that time. Tell us about what was going on in Boise then and how things were.
Well, again, it was July of 99. Rick Greenfield, then the previous director, and he'd resigned and moved to Washington State. So I was coming off an assignment over in the Seattle area to build a new Seahawks stadium, so I needed something else to do. So found this little endeavor, and again, being a native Idahoan, I decided it was time to come back. And so when I got here, there was a board, I think, consisting of 7 people. Kevin McKee was the chair. Phil Rehberger was on the board. So, certainly a group of people that had some horsepower. Chuck Hedemark was there. Well, again, there's 7 people. Can't come up with them right now. But anyway, I think they were observing that generally the whole system was kind of running on like 3 cylinders. There was a view from some people, particularly on the city council, that this whole urban renewal effort had done kind of a flop over the 20 years that it had been trying to get the downtown mall off the ground. But then basically there was a view that you should close out Central and just go away. But I think the other side of that coin was in 96, it was the city council that basically concluded that they needed to create the River Myrtle District, because they didn't want to see Front and Myrtle couplet developed like Fairview Avenue out by the mall. So that was the impetus behind the creation of that. So I think at least the powers that be, and again, the mayor at the time was Mayor Coles, basically a planner by trade. And so I think he understood the capacity of the tool. And so that was brought on board. And again, it was really early on, so it didn't have much money. And so it was kind of the project in hindsight. So anyway, as I had indicated earlier in the brief comments earlier, that symbolically, the executive director's desk office had a credenza in it, and one end was propped up on phone books.
Perfect.
So we kind of suggested maybe there was a less than a commitment to permanence there, but that certainly wasn't the vision of the board that hired me. They felt that the opportunity existed to do some interesting things, and the toolkit was available to us, and so we should stand up and act like an institution that was worthy of respect.
Well, I've got to believe that they were starting to see some success from Central, even though it was maybe only 10 years old, something like that.
Yeah, it started, way back in '65. But
well, I'm familiar with that story.
Yeah, right. But anyway, the it was interesting that at that time, a big project, a big private project, would be probably in the neighborhood of $6 to $9 million. That was a big deal. And so you were seeing projects that were mid-rise, the not the Banner Bank building, but the one at 9th and Idaho building. That was a big project. Also at that time, there was the Boise Tower issue was before us in terms of the let's build a 24-story condo project at 8th and Main. And that wasn't going anywhere. And so there were a number of things trying to happen, but a lot of things just not happening. Um, so I think what at least the direction we got from the board was kind of stand up and make this institution functional, and let's not be ashamed of ourselves. And so we had an erstwhile staff of 5, many of whom have been there for quite a while. And but again, they were kind of browbeat too. And so I think what we needed to do was kind of do some organizational development activities, focusing both internally, fiscally, and then try to build relationships outside the organization as well. Um, Again, one of the early on projects, and one of my city manager mentors back in my old days was, find a relatively small project that you can get done and get it done quick. And so that just happened to be the Bass Block. And it had kind of flopped around out there in somebody's mind for decades that somebody needed to do something to acknowledge them, the Basque heritage in the community. So I kind of embraced that and ran around and basically had Jensen Belts, who was the landscape architect, for complete the project design, and then tried to come up with resources to fund it. It was eventually wound up being $469,000 worth. Remember the number perfectly well.
That's a good number. You started with like 100,000 commitment from the board for that one, and you must have raised the ante at some point.
Well, then we went out and we begged people for more. So we went to the city, and Mayor Coles, he agreed to match our $100,000 with the city's $100,000. And then I went to ACHD, who were always embraced us with open arms, and basically asked them to match the city's and our contribution. But they eventually came up with 50,000. So that was something. And obviously, we still had a gap. And so we kind of created what was kind of a pseudo local improvement district, where we went to the property owners and say, will you fund the balance of this? And we'll be willing to we'll carry your note for 10 years to pay us back. And everybody signed up. But nobody gave us Wentworth the note. They just paid up. So I think there was one entity that actually paid over time, but everybody else just basically says, okay, let's do it. And so with that, we built that project, and it was extremely popular. It worked, came in on time and under budget, so everybody was happy. And so I think that sent an indication that maybe this little outfit can do something.
Well, that's wonderful, Phil. I didn't really know that it was a barn raising, and that it was really on a shoestring to get that win early in the 2000s.
Yeah, I told Mayor Coles that I haven't spent so much time on my knees since I was an altar boy. Good for money. So anyway,
that's pretty funny. Yeah, well, we were just reading about that project at work recently, and wondered, okay, who exactly designed it? And we found Jensen Belts in there, and then you must have really done some good work with ACHD to get licensing agreements and to be able to do the work with the curbs and the street itself.
Yeah, and because it was totally different than their standard stuff. And I worked with Judy Peavy Durr, who was the president of the commission, and that's always an interesting work. But she was eventually on board, and basically, once you get Judy on your team, then things can happen. And so I think that's was part of the issue is the new guy coming in from Washington State. Haven't had a chance to offend people yet, so maybe pick people off in terms of trying to share a vision that might be new and fresh to them, and let them be part of something that can be an early win. And so I think it was the first time that in CCD's history that anybody ever done a brass plaque. And it says everybody's got to have their name on a brass plaque. And so we did that down on the Bass Block. And, I've been down on the street and have these people whose names on the brass plaque bringing their grandkids and pointing to the brass plaque. So you cannot overestimate the power of a brass plaque.
Boy, isn't that the truth? And we see those, in our work in the modern day where, thanks to the early work, we were extremely well funded. We did a lot of projects, and we probably could have had our own foundry at one point here in the last few years.
Given your stuff you've done.
So many. Well, just the 30-year district, the magic of a, of a 30-year or a 24-year district. You have the resources.
Because it kind of takes a while to build up the momentum, but there toward the end, you're working pretty hard. And when I left in 2011, I observed to the board that when I came, we had cash position, ending cash of $21,700. When I left, we had $15 million. And so, that is a function of time and stewardship and creating other districts. But again, the process works. And it's not something that is an immediate effect. I think that's part of the issue, is trying to convince people that you create this thing and, magic isn't going to happen today. It's kind of the long-range planning, the long-range vision, sticking with it over the long haul, I think, is the critical piece. And I think ultimately, I've kind of termed it you get the urban renewal dividend, but it's an investment over time.
Wow, very well said. Yeah, we're having a lot of these conversations where we're trying to run it into a corner. What is the effect of the urban renewal tool for not just Boise but statewide? You give a great perspective on that. For us to kind of look at the year 1999, doing one block, and it was magic, and it still is. And so you think small, so you can go big. That's really impressive. You arrived with Central kind of happening. The Grove Plaza was complete, right? And was Patty Tillett still on the scene and helping you with other matters here?
Absolutely. We wouldn't let Patty get out of town until, in fact, he retired a few years ago. And I've described him as being Boise's E.F. Hutton, because when Patty Tillett speaks, everybody listens. And not only did he basically articulate the vision that you see downtown now, he was instrumental in the evolution of the Boise State campus.
Yeah, he's really had a big impact in this city. We had the pleasure of re-engaging with him when the Grove Plaza needed a refresh just prior to the sunset, because once again, it was done on a shoestring, back in the 1990 era, 89, 90. And we were able to have the resources to see what you see there today. And boy, he was happy, because he saw, okay, now we have some resources. We can take this up a notch and make it really attractive, but really safe too, because we were getting a few lawsuits from people tripping on some of the bricks down there.
Well, I think that's one of the the counterpoints that I've observed is in Idaho, where basically communities are starved for resources. They can afford to plan, but they can't afford to implement. And so the urban renewal tool is the other critical piece of that dichotomy. Is you can take a plan and you can actually do something with it. And once you start to make successful tracks, then you get the belief system behind you. Hey, this can work. And since I left CCDC, I've worked around the state, and that theory has basically worked all over the state. Twin Falls is a great example. They've used the the tool quite differently than Boise has, even though they've used the same downtown twin. But they've used it aggressively in economic development with Chobani and Cliff Bar and other things like that. So I think the system has gotten a lot more respect than it had in 1989.
Well, those early steps, getting Central to be successful and then getting River Myrtle underway, it attracted Old Boise, a neighborhood that wanted in. And if you'd walk us through that and then walk us over to the west side and the vision for west side, because you did so much important planning in those years, and it's been fun for me to run through the finish line since you laid the track out for us.
Thank you. That was useful. I didn't have to suffer the contracts and all that stuff. But yeah, because River Myrtle was kind of in place and had good vision and so forth. And but early on, the powers that be in Old Boise, namely Joan Carley, didn't want to have anything to do with us because we were government. And then Clay came back to town because he'd been gone for like 15 years doing other stuff, and kind of said, well, wait a minute, let's not reject this out of hand. And so, he and I developed an ongoing relationship, which we still have, that basically talked about how this works, what the benefits might be. He and then Ed Miller from Givens was Joan's attorney, basically used his good offices to say, these guys aren't communists after all. They can do good things. And so eventually she came around, and that particular addition to the River Myrtle district was done by petition of the property owners, and which was, again, something unique, that there was a huge, broad level of support by the property owners, and they signed this petition, came to the board and the city council saying, we want to be a part of this. And we had conversation, do we create a separate district or do we annex them to the River Myrtle district? And the fact that there was starting to be some resources in River Myrtle, we thought it'd be better to not start them on a starvation diet totally, and maybe they could leverage some of the mileage that's already existing at River Myrtle. And so they were players.
That's great. And you had some resources. You could get them right on board, but they would have a shorter runway, right?
Right.
In the time. Yeah.
And that's always good if you can do that, because everybody wants immediate gratification, and the process, by definition, just takes time because you don't get your increment until you get your CO, and then you got a year's delay to get on that. So even the biggest project is going to have a couple, 3 years before you can get a dime out of it.
That's right. Well, what a nice moment, though, when you have maybe some skeptical, even elected officials, over at the city, wondering when you're going to dissolve. And here comes a petition of people wanting to join.
Right. And I think they saw the fact that something I think very unique in urban America is the turn that downtown Boise was making was pretty unusual, because I kept looking for cousin cities around who we could kind of compare notes with, and really I couldn't find anybody. I think Boise is really quite unique in terms of what they were able to do, and I think part of it was happenstance and part of it was by design. We didn't tear it all down, even though we tried to for a while.
Yeah.
So you have an interesting mix now of some historic context. You've got the small blocks, and you've got new, modern office and retail space that would never work in the old 1890 vintage buildings. And so you've got that pedestrian orientation. You've got the signature bricks and all that kind of stuff. You've got the human scale block faces. So that's stuff that urbanists kind of lust after, and we have it.
Yeah, and I've mentioned this before, just the grid and the length of the blocks are just perfectly set up for us now to make it walkable, bikeable. Takes a little work on retrofitting, but you've seen some of the examples of the work downtown. on 11th and over onto the Grove. How did you happen to strike upon the West Side district then?
Again, we were making progress through, and I think the other meaningful event is I think the population went to 150,000. And all of a sudden, we were in investment maps all over the country for people with bigger dollars than the $9 million mid-rise building. And so all of a sudden, things were happening that didn't happen before that number was published. And so there was that artificial line. There was the old federal aid area, which was bigger than the revenue allocation area, which is the central district. So there was this kind of no man's land out on the west side of the urban renewal district that was going to have the federal money went away. And so it kind of had some expectations about being included, but it legally couldn't be. And so we said, well, why don't we just formalize this and create a new district so that the energy that's created here and has been exported over to the old Boise side, maybe we can drag the energy to the west as well. And so we did that. And again, of course, the city council supported that. And I think that has, again, proven beneficial. We try to convince Skips that people might want to live downtown Boise. Oh, you're crazy. Nobody ever want to do that. And so here he is, building this 26-story building. So again, big ideas, patience, and a well-articulated vision can eventually get you there.
Well, adding the west side was such a good stroke. It enabled us to do both sides of Grove Street. Since we would have been a little bit of a missing gap on one side of the street when we've rebuilt that project, but also, Phil, due to the changes from a 30-year timeline to a 24-year timeline, West Side and River Myrtle / Old Boise almost synced up. I mean, they're just a year apart on sunsets, and it's been very actually convenient for us when we're at peak revenue in those districts to be able to do projects that are adjacent. Was that your planning, or was that just happenstance?
It was, I wish we could say we were brilliant planning, but that's just kind of the way it worked out because, the legislature was, loving us to death over there. And they reduced it from 30 to 24, then to 20. They cut off your most predicted revenue years. And so that's a struggle. But I think it still works, still has worked. I'd hate to see it go any shorter than 20 years, but I think we understood when we created the district that they were going to be kind of landing on the two runways about the same time. But again, that kind of made the whole focus on the downtown kind of come together cleanly, even though we didn't plan it that way.
Well, Phil, we are in that moment now, and you're right. Skip Oppenheimer has constructed the largest residential building in downtown, probably in the state, and we have a brand new state-of-the-art YMCA nearly complete in the West Side District, and adjacent to that, we're constructing a mixed-use building with 7 floors of parking and a story and a half of mixed use. So the plan's coming together here in the 11th hour. So nice work on that.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting that given the population growth of Boise in the broader valley, there aren't very many people around that remember how it used to be, and so they assume that it's always been like this. But some of those geezers have been around long enough to understand that this just didn't fall out of the sky.
Yeah, that's so true. We just opened a new pathway today, the Grove Street pathway. It's been open for a while, but the official city event was today to designate the name Grove Street pathway. And you know what that does? It connects Broadway behind the courthouse to, to Grove Street at Third, and it's magnificent. It's wonderful. If you like to bike and walk, and roller skate, whatever, it's a nice 2,000 foot long cut, access route, all the way to the eastern neighborhood, frankly. But I have people who work for me who just think that these things just happen. When are we going to do another one? It's like,
Back when we were building the courthouse, that there was a big flap just before I got there about the construction of Winco, basically taking, I guess, 4th Street, whatever street.
It's Broad Street.
Broad Street,
Yeah.
and basically preempting the connection all the way to Broadway. And there was a bunch of huzz about that. And so at one point, I said, why don't we just build a pedestrian way along Grove down behind the courthouse as a substitute for that? And again, that was one of those what we call parking lot issues. You write it on a board someplace, and maybe someday somebody will do something about that. So I'm glad to see that that has come to fruition, and I think it's going to basically be a major connection, non-motorized connection into the East End. That it's going to be great.
Yeah, it's really quite cool. And with the irrigation company, the Boise Canal Group has been great to work with. And what we ended up with is, a water feature alongside this very attractive pathway, and then some historic structures nearby. So that one's worked out. But those take so much work, and no one wants to hear about the labor pains, right? They just want to enjoy it. That's fine.
Yeah, different parties to sign up and agree, and that's a whole different skill set than construction management. You got to get there first, and that's always very time consuming, and a different skill set than basically just building something.
Yeah, and not as instantly gratifying, right? And like back to your point with politicians who are on a 4-year or 2-year cycle, they want to see something built during their time, and so would the group you're working with at your office. And I want to ask you about building your team in 1999 to your whole time you were there. Who were some of the people that you identified and brought in to be your kitchen cabinet or your inner circle and get these things going?
Well, clearly the stalwart of the whole thing has been Ryan Armbruster. He was the attorney going back in 1977. So he knew where all the skeletons are buried and what's possible and what's not. But we did manage to push him a little bit from his comfort zone, suggesting that no is not an answer that we were looking for. So he demonstrated his flexibility. And then we brought Pam Sheldon in to be the point person on long range planning. That was her skills back in Colorado. And then brought Max Clark down to kind of be the parking guru, because he was my parking guy up in Bellevue. And neither one of us ever wanted to be involved in parking, but we wound up that way. I'm just looking at your budget today, and that's turned out to be a pretty good situation.
Yeah, it's working out.
And I think he was kind of the front with the businessmen on the street and so forth, and he's very good at that. Then we one of the things we did that was conscious is when I got there, we had a private retirement plan. I convinced the council to go and bring the agency under Percy, so that we might be able to recruit among city departments, because nobody's going to leave Percy to come to a private retirement plan. So they did that, and so that kind of opened up, opportunities within the state to bring people on board. And we got my call out of the city of Boise, who I just had dinner with last month in Detroit. He's now off in Topeka, Kansas, and we're at the planning conference. So we had dinner together, reminisced a bit. Todd Bunderson, we snatched out of the city of Nampa to count our numbers for us. So basically, we um, kind of accelerated the level of professionalism than what had been there before, and I think that's what, as you probably know better than anybody, that's kind of the job description for the executive director. Is you got to be able to articulate the vision and help people get there, and uh, provide resources and get rid of obstacles and get out of the way so you can do good work.
That's right. And to get out of the way and knowing when to step aside and let someone else have the spotlight, let them have the golden shovel, let them, get to work and build it. Um, you're home free, right? You get to that point, you've done your job.
There's always another challenge out there. Your skill set is needed, and it's not out there in doing specific project management. So I think maintaining that higher level of vision and foresight and partnership building, I think that's one of the things that accrues to the executive director's position that really can't accrue to anybody else. So that's
right.
what you.
Yeah, and your name's on the door, and the luck stops there. So I really appreciate your sharp eye for talent, because I enjoyed the working with Pam Sheldon up until her retirement, and Max Clark up until his retirement, and Todd Bunderson as well. And they were all just fantastic employees, and we had the resources once again, right? Parking had gotten its legs under it, and Todd, he expressed interest to end his time at CCDC in the development side. He'd seen some things, had some ideas, and he handled that just great for me, especially as I was learning, the role there. So good job hiring. We'll fill in your 12 plus years with CCDC. You were involved in many, many projects that did actually come off of planning and into real life and take form. What are the ones that come to mind, and share with us what you're most proudest of or most memorable?
There's the good, the bad, and the ugly. I think the most remarkable one was the county courthouse. When I walked in, that was involved in litigation, and it was basically a bunch of papers and lawyers sitting around an office with their meters spinning. And it was an idea that was well conceived, but God, it was complicated. It was a um, publicly owned land under a lease to us, under a sublease to somebody else, and a lease back. The document trail was actually standing up 6 feet long when we got done with it.
Yeah, actually, you could make a credenza just out of the paperwork.
Indeed, saved on office supplies. But I think the interesting thing is, and that's probably the only project in my career I've ever been involved with where you went from that conceptual level to the fact that you paid off the bonds. And so I was through the whole process, and it worked out so well that they were able to retire the debt way early. And so that project was basically conceived of, built, concluded, and financed and concluded within the tenure that I was there. And so that was really a PhD in getting something done against all odds. So that was a winner. The certainly again the Bass Block is one that is particular note. The some of the stuff was more pencilly headed than ribbon cutting, but we sat down and we designed out the different classifications of streetscape, because everybody's expecting you to have high brick sidewalks all the way to the river. You can't afford to do that, and you don't even want to do that. And so, how can we define what is basically the core area where you've got the first class sidewalks, I guess, and then how do you basically define how you step that down into an affordable system that you can actually implement. So those kinds of things, and trying to codify the what the relationship potential was in various kinds of relationships to the private sector. So that was interesting. Put that together. I think the one project that was, again, pretty unique was working with Raffinelli and Nahas on their parking structure. That was round and around and around. And Scott Stainer says, well, I got to have $1 million. And I said, well, you don't need $1 million forever. How about just $1 million? And so what we did is we leased 200 spaces for 5 years, and it limited our ongoing obligation, got him over his performa hump. He got to build his parking garage. We got to subsidize it and not marry it long term into some kind of strange relationship with a private entity. So we pulled that out of our hat, and I think Clay Carley's actually used that over on the project over on Fifth. So again, part of it is just taking the efforts that are insurmountable and turning it sideways and painting it blue, and maybe it'll fit that way.
that parking garage with Scott Shaner and Raffinelli Nahas has been a very important tool now for them with the Boise Cascade offices needing parking, and then they did go on to build, as you know, the new 11th and Idaho building.
Yeah, and I think that goes back to the whole issue of projects being catalysts. You can build stuff, or you can build stuff that makes other stuff happen. And that goes back to the Grove Plaza. They built that in 1988. The most expensive bricks you could buy from Nebraska, out in the middle of 4 gravel parking lots with $1.2 million we didn't have. And that seems kind of crazy. We've got those pictures of the Christmas tree out there in the middle of the gravel parking lot. But look what happened. And so I think it's the long-term vision that is really the important factor that needs to be considered. I think the other thing that, again, is planning process is back in 95, we did a housing study and saying, well, housing's a big deal around the country in urban areas. How about us? So we hired Leland and Associates out of Portland to come and we kind of did a study. Said, well, looks like you need like 1,300 units of housing in downtown Boise. And that'd be the normal standard stuff. Said, well, okay. And then our critics say, well, that's just national data. Nobody wants to live downtown Boise. So what's the local market? So we did a local market analysis. They came back to, that's all. We need 5,000 units. And so he says, well, okay. And so about that time, we got that ball rolling. And I think the first project was the Jefferson over on Jefferson and 3rd or 2nd and 4th, I guess, and Bill Clark's project. And that's about when the recession hit. But I think generally people recognize that maybe people do want to live in downtown Boise. Maybe the people up in the foothills are tired of snow blowers and lawnmowers. Maybe the onion farmer from Nissa doesn't need to have that 120 acres anymore. Because the guy, one of the top floor penthouse owners in the Aspen was just that person. And so he wanted to be able to see his farm. So he built the top unit. So I think that whole issue of the housing initiative was very important. Struggling with the hole in the ground was great sport. You couldn't go to anything without people slapping around the head about the hole in the ground. But I was pleased to, on my last board meeting in 90, and I left in 2011 as we signed the agreement to pass the project to Alquist. So that was, I think the outcome there has been good, probably better than what Rick Peterson had envisioned.
I think you're right. I think that it's been phenomenal, and I have to give credit to you, CCDC, the Gardner Company, Zions Bank. Those for everyone coming together to solve that problem. It really lit the fuse, relit the fuse. For downtown, and it gave more developers, especially local ones like Clay and like the Oppenheimers, confidence that hey, we can. So we're starting up again. We're going again. And it was about that time, Phil. Oh, by the way, you were there for the groundbreaking. I was there for the ribbon cutting. So thank you for setting setting it up for success. That was quite a party when that building opened. But,
Yeah.
say that again.
I'll bet it was. And I think the other project was Bodo, because when I came, it was the old 8th Street Marketplace, which was about half empty. And and this was again right after the population data came out that we were a bigger place than we used to be. And I got this call from this guy from California talking about investment opportunities in Boise. And frankly, I kept him on the phone for about 45 minutes and suggested he needed to come in and buy the Simplots out of the East Street Marketplace and do something with that on a retail basis. And that actually happened. His Mark Rivers came to town and basically redefined that whole area, which in itself was beneficial. But the other thing that it did was it basically perceptibly shrunk the width of Front Street. Because until Bodo happened, there was this chasm that was viewed at Front and 8th that nobody was ever going to go across that street. So nothing could ever happen in the River Myrtle district because it was too far across that busy street. Well, all of a sudden, there was a reason to go across the busy street, and so it wasn't as much of an impediment anymore. And so I think the secondary effects of these decisions are not what you can always foretell, but that's what happened.
And yeah, and that project even is in its second generation with the new ownership out of
Right.
Beloit, and they've done good things with the buildings down there and the food hall and those things. But it started with a call to you, a cold call basically, from Mark Rivers.
Right.
And how did you know it was real? Because you get more than one call like that, at different times, and sometimes they're.
Well, you don't know what's real.
Yeah.
But you have to treat them like they're real until they're not real. And, there's no expense in, 45-minute phone call. And I think you can, again, if you have your vision well articulated and can talk about it, you're ready to respond to that cold call, some of which are valid and most of which probably are not. But, I always said that if you hit 300 in the major leagues, you get in the Hall of Fame. And that's a 70% failure rate. And so I think it's important to basically treat every one of them like you could go over the left field wall.
Well said. Hey, I want to come back next time and go deeper on whatever you want to talk about, obviously, but on the courthouse. It's still a mystery to me, and I'm nearing my end, and I had 15 years or 13 years to figure it out. And I don't know what you guys did to make that happen, but it's one of the most complicated arrangements. So if we could delve into that, and then maybe we'll get Armbruster on the line too, and he can confuse me even more. And then Bodo too, kind of what you ran into, because that was a urban railroad situation with a lot of oil tanks, I would guess.
Well, yeah, when they did their level 2, they concluded that they had 2 underground tanks. When they quit digging, the DEQ says stop, they'd uncovered 15. And they were starting to undermine Front Street. And so they said, you've done enough. And so, yeah, that was pretty evil stuff down there. And again, you assume that you do a level 1 analysis, and you assume you do a level 2 analysis, you know what you're going to find. Well, you strike gold down there, and And you just kept digging. And wait a minute, you got to stop sometime.
Well, Phil, it's been great talking to you. This is just round one. We're going to get back together in the near future. Are you up for that?
Yeah. I'll be gone to Finland, getting back on the 15th. So I'll be available after that. And again, uh, probably better if I can, arrange a time to come down and talk to you down there. Um, the other person I want to talk to about the courthouse is Ted Argyle. He's the chief civil deputy over the county, and this whole thing was his idea.
Okay, I'll take that under advisement. Maybe you guys can talk to him about it. He's a good one, too. I'd forgotten about him. Hey, well, safe travels as you disappear into thin air, and we'll look forward to getting together when you get back.
Good. Thanks for the opportunity to reminisce.